Hey, you guys, I'm Carolina, and welcome to the Birth Stories podcast. So, this is a podcast that I wanted to get started for the street working moms community because there are so many incredible women, mothers, and stories about conception and pregnancy, the birth experience, and the postpartum experience. And I have found it super helpful to just be able to get to know all of the different ways that motherhood can look. And it's super inspiring to get to know all of the different amazing mothers within our own community. So my hope is to just sit down and have a cup of tea with each one of these women and get to know them and share their stories so that we can all feel a little bit more connected on this motherhood journey. So I hope you enjoy. I like literally have a cup of tea right here. The intention behind this is just to share these stories and experiences. I really feel like, and I don't know what your experience is, but that street parking moms Facebook group is like pretty special. I don't know. I'm like a part of a number of other Facebook groups and mom groups and stuff. But the one I go to the most and the one that I look forward to, and I keep looking for names of women that I only know through there to see how they're doing and to check in. And like, I think of you guys throughout the day and stuff. And I feel like that's pretty unique. And I wanted to find a way to just be able to connect more and share more so that we can all maybe feel a little bit less alone, and not even alone, like maybe you're not feeling alone, but just to see and remind ourselves that birth and motherhood can look an infinite number of ways, and they're all normal, and we're all doing a good job. Yeah.
Totally.
So, you actually, I feel like you were one of the first moms that signed up for the street parking postpartum bundle right after I started working with street parking for the moms.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And yeah, I remember getting an email from you down the road, your feedback on street parking and the BirthFIT, partnership and the Conscious Core program. And that was the first time I saw one of the street parking moms' stories. You shared a little bit about who you are and what all of that was like with you. And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. She's in New York. She's going through this thing. She had this like really cool experience. And so when I thought about this podcast, I wanted to reach out to you again and just get you to share more about that. So let's start with who you are, where you live, and a little bit about like what you do in the world.
Sure. My name is Ingrid K. I am 33 years old. I grew up in Sacramento, California, lived in Los Angeles for 6 years, then lived in Austin for 6 years, and then ended up in New York City. I live in Astoria, New York, which is in Queens, right outside of Manhattan. And I have worked in CrossFit since 2010, basically, at different gyms from CrossFit LA to CrossFit Central to CrossFit Yakarta in Austin to now CrossFit Queens here in Astoria. So I was originally a track and field athlete at UCLA and had plans to go into sport management of some sort with professional sports outside of fitness. But when I first learned about CrossFit, I got hooked, and I've stuck with fitness as my sport management. So I do administrative stuff working for CrossFit Queens. I had my baby son, Gunner, on January 29th of this year. He is now 10 months old.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And yeah, it's crazy how much has happened in 10 months, 19 months really, but
Yeah.
he's just starting to walk now. So that's our latest milestone we've been working on.
Oh my gosh. So now you're coaching Gunner.
Yeah. We try not to be too give too much direction. We want him to figure it out on his own, but it's definitely very, very exciting.
Yeah. I remember from that first email, you saying something about we'll get more to it. You did 3 sets of 3 10-second pushes during labor or birth. And I was like, wow, that's so funny that she did it, that she wrote it out that way. It looked like a, strength programming.
It was just happened so fast that it was so easy to remember.
3 sets
once it came time to push, everything happened.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your pregnancy or leading up to your pregnancy. How that journey started.
Yeah. So my fiance's name is David Charbonneau, and we decided right around, I guess, New Year's time. I can't even remember, doing the math backwards, trying to figure out what year it was that we decided, probably 2018. Yeah. Because he was born in 2019. We decided we were ready to have a kid. And so we, I had been reading the Taking Charge of Your Fertility book just to understand cycles and how to make all that work. And we actually got pregnant that first time starting around New Year's, but I actually had a really early miscarriage at 6, maybe 7 weeks. It was before my 8-week appointment. And so we just had a positive pregnancy test, and all of the other signs had indicated that I was pregnant, my boobs changed and missed periods and all of those things. But I hadn't seen a doctor yet. But I started cramping and bleeding around that 7-month mark or 7-week mark, and was supposed to fly home for a family thing in California. And I couldn't miss the family thing, but I also thought I should probably go to the doctor. But at the same time, it was at this point, as much as I had already started bleeding overnight, I was I don't think there's anything they could do, and it's only 7 weeks. And so I just took a flight to California and dealt with the symptoms of heavy period problems is basically what it felt like. And then eventually came back to New York and went and had an ultrasound, and they, confirmed that it was a miscarriage of sorts, whether it was, a blighted pregnancy or whatever it was kind of irrelevant at that point. And we were just told that I needed to wait 3 months to try again. And so we did that. And 3 months later we tried again. And I think it was on the 2nd month of trying, we conceived again. And we're really excited and obviously ready to have a baby. And so luckily everything went really smoothly from that point on. And I had a super easy pregnancy. I really can't complain. I had a little bit of pubic symphysis pain, but in comparison to what I've heard other ladies talk about, I feel really, really lucky with the kind of pregnancy that I went through. Yeah. Just no morning sickness, no unreasonable fatigue, normal amount of fatigue.
Yeah.
And I just was able to work out and exercise pretty much, literally until the day I went into labor. So that was pretty lucky, I would say. Very, very blessed that my pregnancy was as easy as it was.
Yeah.
And I was able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then, so go ahead.
Well, I
can go right into labor if you want.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, also mention that obviously, yes, feeling lucky that you had a fairly easy or relatively easy pregnancy, but I think, did you do some work in terms of preparing for that, or and actually, let's even back it up a little bit more. I wanted to ask you, so you were a pretty high level CrossFit athlete. You went to regionals a number
in
of
the games. Yeah.
times, and you went to the games as a team.
Yeah.
Did that play a role in terms of when you decided you were ready? Did you, intentionally, let's say, retire from CrossFit and then decide to start getting pregnant and change the way that your lifestyle was a little bit?
Yeah, I was pretty much done with competing after the 2016 season. That was the last year that they had the grid league, and I was involved in that. And our team had failed to qualify for the games in 2016. So I had done regionals in the spring and then the grid league, and then it was supposed to be the games, but the games didn't happen. So I was, at that point, I was just like, I knew I was done competing and I was ready to move on and do other things. That was the same year that I was leaving Austin. So I was just kind of having a whole lifestyle switch. And I think that the idea of finding, like, being ready to have a baby was something that I had felt like I had always been. I wanted to be a mom since, like, I was in college. Like, I was like, I'll be a 24-year-old mom. Like, that'll be my first kid. And things just didn't work out that way. Like, didn't have the right partner or the right life situation going. But I've always loved kids and babies. So in my heart, I always felt like I wanted to be a mom. So it wasn't like competing was stopping me. I think it was more just like having the right situation of where I was living and who I was with, and being in the situation of wanting to start a family as opposed to just wanting to have a baby. So once all those stars aligned, that was basically, I was like, okay, I'm ready. We're good.
Did you do anything to intentionally, like, change the way that you were training? Obviously, you're not training for a major competition, but were you doing something intentionally different?
With my training, really, I had just kind of become a class member. I would take an hour of class, 5, maybe 6 days a week, and didn't stress about being in the gym any more than that. I would go really hard for that 1 hour still. I wasn't, trying to back off of the intensity that I would bring to the class workout. I really wanted to, like, still maintain muscle ups and still maintain handstand push-ups and still, like, do all this fun skills things that I've had. My strength went down a lot because I'm not really a strength athlete. But I didn't stop working on those things. Just didn't stress about them being a priority. And I've always, like, had a relatively clean diet. I would say like 70-30. Maybe that's not very good percentage, but for me, it was like the 5 days out of the week were paleo-ish.
Right.
And then weekends were kind of, free for all. And so, like, my approach to, like, having a kid didn't really change the way I was living day to day, because I felt like my day to day was already pretty darn healthy. And that the habits that I was doing already supported, conception and having a healthy pregnancy. And I knew that working out all throughout my pregnancy was exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to have to back off at all. That was something that, like, frightened me. Like, I didn't want to slow down, and I didn't want to feel like I was hampered. I wanted to maintain my daily practices, because those are the habits that I've fallen into that keep me happy and sane. So I was lucky to be able to do that. And I think that the level at which I was training was appropriate. If I had been doing, 3 to 4 hours of training a day, it might have been a little bit too much for my body to handle. But luckily.
At what point did you do the BirthFIT coach seminar? Was that before or after?
That was during my pregnancy. It was in September. So about halfway through my pregnancy. Okay. And it was here in New York. It was at CrossFit South Brooklyn, which has a great pregnant and postpartum, like, support community. Their owner, David Garza, is, like, he's got a really great community at CrossFit South Brooklyn. And so he hosted the seminar there, and I, signed up for it a couple months in advance when I was, relatively early in my pregnancy. and just knew that I wanted to have access to the information that was being provided, and to be, inside that community and really jump into it more than just like watching videos online and,
right.
Admiring Embo and Lindsay and everybody and Leah from afar. So I got to go to that seminar, and Melissa Hemphill coached it or led it, and so did Lindsay Matthews, was actually there.
Yeah.
And
Melissa, oh my God, I love her.
She's so great.
Yeah.
And the girl from Atlanta, whose name I can't remember, Emily?
Abby, maybe?
Not Emily.
Oh, no. Maybe
Wait, what did you say?
Abby?
Abby. Yes, Abby.
Okay.
Yes. So those were the three coaches that were there. And it was a phenomenal experience. It was, I feel like the hands-on, the emotional, the physical, the entire, every pillar of BirthFIT was absolutely what they said it was going to be. And it was just a really confirming and solidifying experience for me, especially midway through my pregnancy. So
awesome.
I was really glad to have been able to go to that.
Awesome. Okay, so now let's fast forward to you're working out the day of?
Yeah.
Okay. How far along were you relative to like your supposed due date?
Yeah. So I went into labor at 40 weeks plus 3 days. My sister had been here for like a whole week, maybe even like longer than that before that, because there was like a blood moon, that was happening. And like, she was like, you're going to go into labor. I got to be there early. Like, my sister was going to be one of the people at my birth, along with my mom and David. And so she got here like super early, which was like before my due date. And she's like, I need to be there. And so she had been hanging out with me for like the week, and the due date came and went, and we were kind of like, what's happening? And then my mom
and went.
Yeah. My mom showed up, and she had been here for a few days. And on Sunday, Gunnar was born on a Tuesday. So going back to Sunday, I decided I'll go see my acupuncturist. She is very confident in her abilities to induce labor. Mm-hmm. She asked 3 times if my bags were packed for the hospital before she started our session. And so she did some moxie and some needling, and about 24 hours after my acupuncture appointment, I had my first contractions, and that was a few hours after my last workout. So my mom and my sister and I had gone and done a workout on Monday morning with like some biking and some burpees, which I had just did as like the functional progression where you go down onto all fours and then up to standing. That was what I did.
So you like step back to your hands and knees, and then you step forward, and cool. It's our
kind of like
getting on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I did that workout, and then a few hours after that, we were running some errands, and I started having contractions. So it was basically 24 hours after acupuncture, a few hours after working out, and then about 24 hours later was when Gunnar was born.
Wow.
Yeah. So a 48-hour process after acupuncture. Yeah.
So walk me through that. You are running errands and you start to have contractions. Did you know right away? Had you had any Braxton Hicks and you knew that these were different?
So sometimes when I was working out, my belly would feel really hard. Just it felt like Gunnar had moved himself into a position where he was I'm comfortable because you're working out. So I'm getting myself locked in here. And it would just feel like tension. It wouldn't hurt. It didn't feel like anything other than him just curling up into a ball and not moving. Oh, yeah. But then he would uncurl himself and be fine throughout the day. And so I didn't really worry about that. But when we're running errands, the contraction just felt different. I don't know. The sensation was just a totally different experience than anything that I had felt previously in my pregnancy. So it was just, I knew that it was if it kept going that way, that it was something. And so throughout the day, it just was really like, it stayed on a rhythm, but it didn't speed up right away. It was just like, a couple times an hour and then a couple more times an hour. And the day just went on as normal. My water didn't ever break until I was actually into the hospital. I had the doctor break it, but it was just like we went to bed at maybe 10 or 11, just like I had my timer on my phone, just timing these things just to see if they were anything close to 5 minutes apart, and they weren't.
Yeah.
And so it was like the decision. My mom and sister, they were like, okay, well, we need to get to bed and try to get some rest. Same with David. And I was trying to rest as well. I was trying to sleep, but I couldn't really like sleep through that sensation. It wasn't super painful, but it wasn't like something I could fall asleep during.
Right. You're like, I'm about to have a baby.
That's a lot
to think about.
And I'm just like waiting for like my water to break or for it to get like so insane that I couldn't stand it. And I think at about 4 a.m, I was like getting uncomfortable and needing to be up out of bed and walking around, and I was pacing around the apartment and just trying to like bide our time to calling the doctor.
So by uncomfortable, what is that? Can you?
I guess they were getting more painful.
Pain, where did you feel the pain? Was it like in your back or in the uterus, like cramping or? Yeah,
it was more uterus. It wasn't so much in my back. It was really all centered in the front and around, right under my belly button and my hips. And I was really, I consider myself lucky to not have had back labor from what I've heard about it. So, but it just started getting more intense and more like just not something I wanted to be.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
experiencing, but okay. Yeah.
Were you,
yeah.
Did you have some kind of like game plan of wanting to labor at home, or when, I mean, gosh, I don't even know, like being in New York, you have to like get on the subway or take a like, what do you do?
Luckily we have a car, but yeah, I've heard of people that have taken Ubers to the hospital, and I'm just like, it's such a nightmare. No, we have a car, and I didn't want to like show up at the hospital and have them check me and then say like I was only a couple centimeters and needed to go home.
Yeah. So
I was trying to wait and be patient as long as possible. My mom had me at home, and that was a huge inspiration for me, being like a home birth baby. Like I wanted to have a home birth.
Yeah.
But with like my heart surgery, which happened in 2010, 9 years ago, 2010, my cardiologist wanted me to be in a hospital. She just felt like it was more comfortable for me to be there in case something happened to my heart, not necessarily relating to the pregnancy itself. And so my goal was to try to do it without an epidural. My cardiologist also recommended that I get an antibiotic drip because my heart issue was based on a bacterial infection that I had.
Okay.
And so she thought that the pre-existing or the previous existing heart issue with it being bacterial related, she's like, just do the antibiotics just so that you don't end up with another heart infection, because last thing you want to do is have a heart surgery after having a baby. And I agreed with her wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And so those were my main reasons for being in the hospital, was for the safety of my heart and for the antibiotic option. And even after the first one, it's like, I don't know, we'll come to that later about my second baby down the road someday. But, so yeah, the decision was like, wait as long as I possibly could at home before I showed up at the hospital, so that I wasn't wasting time, like coming back and forth or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I think we called the doctor at like 5.
Okay.
She was like so sleepy sounding and was like, okay, wait an hour and then come in. And I was like, I already waited an hour.
Yeah, you're like, I've been up for a long time.
Yeah. So I called her back again around 6:30. She's like, okay, come in. And then like the last selfie that I took on my phone on the day of the baby's birth was at like 7 in the morning, and we're like loading the car.
Oh God.
And I'm like holding like this pillow and like trying to take a selfie of us getting in the car. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to document everything.
Oh my God.
And that was it.
Yeah. It gets real after that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but they admitted me and checked me, and I was already 6 centimeters dilated, and
Wow.
they're like, okay, you're good to come in.
So while you're like laboring at home, that time between, you said like 4, you call your doctor at 5, she tells you to wait. Was there anything that you were doing that you found really helpful in terms of managing the discomfort, pain, whatever, the sensation? What were you doing in that time?
I was walking around the apartment, just trying to keep moving. I didn't want to get stuck in one position and like not be able to move. So walking was really helpful. When the contractions were coming, I would usually lean over like the back of the couch, so that like my head was down and trying to breathe, just trying to breathe.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with my mantra of letting it go. My fiance can never watch Frozen again because I would say let it go during all my contractions. I wasn't thinking about that, but I was thinking about releasing like the tension in my body and releasing the pain and releasing any sort of like negative energy that I might have had.
Mm-hmm.
And at home, things were still a lot like clearer for me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like once I got to the hospital, I had my eyes closed so much that I don't remember a lot of it because I don't have this visual like picture of the room because I just was like doing everything with my eyes closed.
Yeah.
Just breathing and manage all of the feelings that kept, arriving rapidly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my mantra became let it go. Just really trying to release tension in my body, really trying to let my system do its thing without me being too tense and too tight and trying to squeeze anything. I didn't want to feel like the baby wasn't going to be in the right position or anything because I was holding him in. And so let it go, let it go, let it go. That was my mom.
Tell me, I'm really curious because I had a car ride experience. A little bit about that car ride. How did that go for you?
Luckily, because it was so early in the morning on a Tuesday morning, we didn't run into the normal New York City traffic. Okay. That was definitely a fear. Like, that was a real fear that we'd be stuck in the car for like 45 minutes. I think the drive ends up taking like 15 minutes when it's super clear. But we had this old like 2002 Civic that's like, what are those called? The shocks were like really shot on it. Oh God! And so I remember this really bumpy stretch of road and just being like, David, drive better. And he's like, I can't drive better.
Oh God, those potholes. Oh man,
it's just, it didn't like, as much as like, you want to stay moving, you don't want other things to be moving you.
No, you want to have control of that. And there's no way you can like brace for it. It just, it hits you.
Very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay. So 15 minutes in the car.
Yeah.
Bad, but like not rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get to the hospital, and
yes, they admitted me, checked me right away, brought me in. I guess it was like a kind of slow morning. Not a lot of other people in the waiting room. Like I heard of from other people who had gone to the same hospital that had to wait in like the waiting room, even though she was like, having contractions. And at one point, like her husband was like, no, like bring her in now.
Oh my God, what a nightmare.
So it was the same hospital. So I was very nervous about that, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And we went into like the labor and delivery like suite. And they let all three of my people come in, even though there's only supposed to be two. And
Awesome.
I had been at an OBGYN with a team of, an OBGYN practice with a team of ladies that I had met all of them separately at my several different appointments, many different appointments.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman who was there when I went in, she left at some point during the morning. And then my new doctor, who I had just met at like my very last appointment, came in and she's like, "Oh, I'm going to be here for the rest of the day." And I was like, "Great, good. I met you and I know you and we're on the same page about things."
Cool.
And then, I had a labor and delivery nurse who was there, helping me out with other things throughout the day. But for the most part, it was David and my mom and my sister really, really supporting me like on all sides during every contraction. Like somebody was like holding my hand, somebody was rubbing my ankles and my calves and my feet, and somebody was pressing on my hips if I wanted them to.
So you were able to move around, like they were able to get into position to push on your hips and stuff.
Yeah.
Was there a particular position that seemed to really work for you?
I feel like I spent quite a bit of time standing at the beginning, standing so that I could still kind of walk and sway. And then during the middle, I decided I wanted to lie down on my side and have one knee raised.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I had the peanut in between my knees. And then towards the end of labor, I was on all fours, or like I was on my knees with my hands on the peanut ball.
On your knees. Okay, yeah. Like kind of hanging over it a little bit. Yeah. Were your knees on the bed or on the ground?
On the bed.
Okay.
Yeah. So the whole setup was on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that my bed could have been rearranged into like a squatting position if I had wanted it to. There was a shower available if I had wanted to get into it, but I honestly went into such like a dark place in terms of like the pain being really overwhelming that I had my eyes closed, and I don't remember talking to anybody in the room very much. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of that experience just was overwhelmed by the intensity of the contractions and the pain of laboring without an epidural. Yeah. And so the very specifics of labor, I don't really remember hour by hour. I do remember I think it was 11:30-ish, maybe in between 11 and 12. I still hadn't had my water break, and I know I was at 8 centimeters dilated, and I was like, if you break my water, will it make me dilate more? And she's like, it could. I mean, it's not guaranteed. Uh-huh. And so she broke my water, and I was fine with that. I was like, okay, whatever to speed this process up without actually having drugs or anything. And so she broke my water bag, and I was standing up for that because I guess she needed, I had to stand up to I guess I don't know why I had to stand up for that. Maybe it was to wear or to, I don't know. That doesn't make sense. I was going to say because I think that the water needed to come out into one of those special underwear to drip onto the floor. But why would she make you do that?
Well, they probably wanted to check to see if there was I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I would assume that maybe want to check to see if there's any meconium or anything in it. I don't know.
But it was clear. Everything was fine. And so I got back in bed. And I think at some point between 12 and 1, I started to feel like the contractions were going to this other level. They would be their normal contraction, and then they would shift into overdrive and then back down. And to me, it felt like my body wanted to push. And so I've never done this before. I don't know what that's supposed to feel like. But to me, it was like this level of squeezing that I couldn't like let go of, no matter how much I was like talking through it, breathing through it, like repeating my mantra.
Let go.
Yeah. And so to me, I was like, something's happening to me that I don't understand. And they're like, well, it's not time to push yet because you're not at 10 centimeters. And I was like, okay, I'm not trying to push. I swear. But it just felt like this, I don't know, because I had felt like these contractions had hit their peak many times before, but this was like above that. It just felt like my body was pushing on the gas above and beyond, like, fifth gear or whatever.
Wow.
So, I was in that hands and knees position, and the nurse, like checked under the sheet and was like, "Oh, you're crowning."
How long had it been?
Like, I mean, since the last check, maybe an hour. I don't know.
So you would,
but it was
like 8. You were 8 centimeters maybe, and then this intense sensation, and then they check and they're like, "Oh, you're crowning."
Yeah. Okay. And it's probably been like 3 contractions with this like really intense like overdrive level.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't remember too well. And the nurse is like, "Well, your doctor's doing a C-section right now." And I was like, "Okay, this is great." And so they bring in, some other OB that's on the floor all the time. And she asked if I would turn over to my back to push. And my mom was like, "Can she labor or can she push on her hands and knees?" And the doctor said, "I would prefer it if you don't, or I prefer it if you are on your back." And that was kind of a bummer. But I'm in this situation where I'm like, whatever makes it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like I don't know any better-ish. You know, like just do this.
And I guess like if she needs that in order to do her job properly, like I would like to help her do her job as much as possible, because I think that should be the safest thing. And so I ended up on my back, and, with my knees up to my chest, and we start pushing, and it was like really hard pushes. Like I feel like I max effort, like the hardest deadlift, hardest squat, hardest whatever for, 10 seconds. I worked so hard during those 10 seconds when they were telling me to push. Like I had no fear of overdoing it. Like I had no, nothing at that point, like wanted me to hold back. I just wanted to get that baby out. I wanted this to be done. I was like, okay, if you're telling me to push, I am going to push everything. And so I did. And it was like I said, I think it was 3 sets of 3 10-second pushes, like really, really hard. And that final one, where his head came out was like unbelievably painful. But at the same time, it was like, oh, that's it. There it is. So I just had to work really hard.
It's almost a relief at that point, almost.
And as much as I wanted to be like, not a screamer, I know that I screamed really loud.
Yeah.
Like I'm very loud. And he popped out, and they put him on my chest, and I was just blown away. So blown away.
Yeah.
It was just crazy that he like came out and was there, and just.
That's awesome that they like gave him to you and he was with you immediately. And was that something that you had like asked for in advance, or something this hospital just did?
I had asked for that in advance. I'd also asked for like delayed cord clamping and cutting. And so when they said, "David, it's time to cut the cord," I was like, wait, like, I want to wait. And they're like, "We did wait. It's been like 5 minutes." And I was like, oh, I guess I guess that's waiting, but I was expecting to wait like 45.
Yeah.
But it turns out that I was like needing more attention because I had a tear, a cervical tear. And so they needed to like cut the cord in order to start repairing me, to deliver the placenta and then start repairing me. And so it was kind of a medical necessity on my part, not on the part of the baby, that they cut the cord. But he was like, at least in the pictures, he was like super pink, and it looks like he got a lot of the blood out of the cord that he needed and stuff. So I don't feel super bad about that. But
yeah.
It was like, that's so fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as he's like hanging out with me, and me and Dad are like talking about the baby, they're like working on me, and I'm kind of like, I have no idea, like I knew that it hurt a lot when he came out, but I had no idea what sort of damage had been done.
Yeah.
But they end up calling, they called the code team because I was bleeding a lot. Mm-hmm. And suddenly there were like 10 people in the room, like 10 people from the hospital in the room, in addition to my mom, my sister, and David, and then my labor and delivery nurse, and then my labor and delivery OBGYN, and then my original one who was supposed to be there came in there. And so then there's like this team of people. There's the senior OBGYN who oversees the entire floor, and he's like the emergency head guy. And he's directing my original OB as to what she should be doing. And then there's like all these other like nurses that go around. And so it turns out that they're working on controlling the bleeding that was happening. My cervix had tear. I had a sulcal tear, which basically means like basically the inside of your vagina had torn. And then I had several tears, like I had a perineal tear and then a labial tear as well. But the big one was the cervical one.
Wow.
And so they ended up, there was like so many instruments at one point, like clamping all the things inside of me. And the doctor decided that I needed to be under because she wasn't able to get back into my vagina enough in order to get things stitched up. So she wanted to put me under so that I was more comfortable, because they were really like trying to get 5 to 10 people's hands in there at once, which was a lot.
Yeah, that's intense.
So they left Gunner with Dad and my mom and my sister, and I was taken to the operating room, and they put me under, and they did whatever they had to do to sew me up and stitch my cervix and stitch the sulcal tears and everything. And so then I woke up, and they called it the PACU, which I don't know what that stands for, but it's some sort of care unit, obviously, like postnatal maybe. Mm-hmm. But it's like a shared room. So like I was on one side of a curtain, and then there was like 2 other people in the same room who I never saw. And the other people in the room at different times were going in for their C-sections. So I think it was some sort of like prep area where people will go and like change and I guess get into their hospital beds in order to go be wheeled out for C-sections. But I was there for recovery, and it was like the worst place to be for recovery because there were like so many people coming in and out throughout the day, and like this is supposed to be like my quiet time with my baby, and I'm coming out of surgery, and it was an intensely small space for me and my 3 people, which I'm only supposed to have 2. And so it was just like, that was the part that was like the worst.
Yeah. Was Gunner...
because I wanted to be mother and baby unit. I wanted to go be up in my actual room where I'm either by myself or with a roommate. And they needed to keep me there in order to monitor all of my levels because I was low on blood count and needing, additional resources.
Yeah. Was Gunner with you in this room?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. He wasn't, the only time he wasn't with me was when he was, when I was in the operating room.
Okay.
And so we were there overnight the first night. So I had him at like 1:20 in the afternoon on Tuesday. And then by Wednesday, they allowed us to move up to the mother baby unit. I think it was in the afternoon. So it was probably 24 hours that I had to spend in this very small space. And that was just uncomfortable. And like, at the time though, like I'm so in this bubble of just wanting to be with the baby and wanting to like focus on us that I'm not trying to like push my way around the hospital and try to like demand that I get moved and all of these things because I just don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on my kids. But finally we got moved and everything was much better once we finally got to mother baby. Yeah. And he had been, you know, nursing and I wonder if he may have nursed even before I went into the operating room. I can't remember. Some things are very hazy. I lost a lot of blood. But he definitely started nursing afterwards, which was great.
That's incredible, especially with like the blood loss.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was making a lot of colostrum. So amazing. That was really fun to like see the like super golden colostrum coming out and like that was really fun. I even got to like at some point during the next couple of days while I was still at the hospital, I stayed for a total of Tuesday night, Wednesday night, 3 nights. They released me on a Friday. I got to pump while I was in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Like they taught me how to use the pump so that I like knew how to do it. And I pumped colostrum and I pumped so much colostrum.
Wow.
And it was really exciting. But yeah, everything with Gunner was great. He was totally fine, like happy kid, like did everything he was supposed to do, like poop and sleep and keep us up all night. And but for me, it was a couple of days of getting a couple of blood transfusions. I even got a platelet transfusion.
Wow.
And then I also had 2 different MRIs of my abdomen because they were concerned that I might have had a blood clot that wasn't going to pass appropriately. But it eventually passed like several weeks later once I got home. Wow. They just let it hang out because it wasn't like so large that they had to worry about it. But those first 4 days in the hospital were just like a lot. They're just a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you thinking about at all like how this was going to affect your recovery? Did you have an idea of how your immediate recovery would go, and how did this like fit into that picture?
I think at the hospital I still hadn't like even thought about any of that. Once I got home and had a couple of days at home to like kind of assess the situation and really get to know my body again and like even be confident enough to like look at what was going on down there because there were stitches everywhere. I was like, oh, I might never heal again. I had a lot of discomfort from the stitches, a lot of pain from just how everything was healing. And it was just, I honestly thought that like it was going to take months for everything to normalize. And at the 6-week mark, I went to see I had to go every week. I had to go every week for the first 4 weeks after he was born to see the OB. She wanted to check on me. So I had to go see her every week. And just making the trip into the city, I wasn't driving those times. I would take the train to just save on parking because the parking's like $25. Oh. Those trips were like a lot for me. It was just like more movement and more effort than I wanted to make just to go see her. And just knowing how uncomfortable it was every time she checked me, like I was like, no, this isn't good. This is going to be months and months. Wow. But then at the 6-week mark, she was like, okay, come back again in 2 more weeks at 8 weeks and then I'll see if I can clear you. And I was like, you're not going to clear me at 8 weeks. Like, I'm not ready to be cleared. Like,
yeah.
you and I both know this, right? And so she clears me at 8 weeks. And I was like, okay, like I'm not sick and I'm not injured, but I am not physically prepared to do anything.
Right. That's
like,
crazy though, because you could take that the other way and then be back doing all the things.
Yeah. And I just knew that, like, even though theoretically my stitches were healing and everything was getting better, I was just like, I'm not prepared. So I had asked her for a pelvic floor physical therapy appointment, and started those relatively soon after that. I may have started conscious core at 8 weeks because I felt like it was so gentle.
Yeah.
And that I started the breathing things.
Yeah.
And I started like sitting in a way that was different.
Yeah.
Like literally sitting in a way that created pressure on like my perineum again, which I hadn't done for, months. But it definitely was like a super slow start. And I just knew that I was like, I wasn't going to go running. I wasn't going to go lifting. I wasn't wanting to squat at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it blew my mind that she was like, yeah, you're clear. Like,
crazy.
Your clear and my clear are different.
Crazy.
So, yeah.
So, you started conscious core.
Yeah.
You started like breathing exercises, working on your posture, that kind of stuff. And then at a certain point, you maybe got a little impatient and you were like ready to go. So like, how did that go? What did you do? How'd you move through that?
I started skipping rest days on conscious core.
Yeah.
That's where I started. And that was like, okay, that didn't really cause me any sort of detriment. I think that I was working through my physical therapy appointments week by week as well. And she had checked my diastasis, and that was pretty good. I had a lot of just pain in my vagina just from stitches and things being, different in there. And so she was doing a lot of like manual therapy, both inside and outside, to try to loosen my muscles and rearrange the scar tissue and just get me like understanding how everything functioned. And so she wasn't like prescribing Kegels or anything, which was great because she's like, you don't have, a issue with the contraction part. It's just that you need to figure out how to not have pain going through your daily life.
Right.
And so she did a lot of manual therapy and prescribed a lot of that for me at home as well, which was great and ended up being perfect. Everything's so much better now.
Amazing.
My pelvic floor physical therapist was like this really wonderful woman. And those people who do that are seriously like another angel on earth, along with like labor and delivery nurses. Like they do some really great work for women. So as are all birth workers, really, like, doulas and midwives and all of them. They're all very, very great people. So.
Yeah. But you're in a place where you're like, I don't know how to heal this. My OB clearly didn't know how to heal it.
No.
Who is going to help me? And then this specialist comes in, and that's their job. That's their role. And it's a vulnerable place to be in. And I feel like I had no idea how that was going to work, And it's such an important resource and tool.
Yeah, she's just like a really cool person.
Yeah.
Like her personality was so just easy to get along with. And she talked about like your vagina like it's your knee or like your pinky, like,
right.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not something that was ever embarrassing. It's not something that was ever like shameful or something that I should be like scared about talking about. And it's like, I mean, giving birth, one, you really lose a lot of modesty or give up any modesty if you were holding on to that. But this, like, I don't know, her approach to talking about women's bodies was just
empowering.
Everything.
Yeah.
So empowering.
Yeah.
So empowering. And it's like, it served as a great example of how, like, I can go about in the world when I need another woman who wants to talk about baby stuff. And, like, even the other day we had a woman walk into the gym and she's like, walks in with her stroller and she goes, "Do you guys do postpartum training?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, we do. First of all, have you seen a pelvic floor physical therapist?" Right. And she's like, "Well, my OB cleared me at 6 weeks." And I was like, "Okay, great. How far along are you?" And she's like, 10 weeks postpartum. And I was like, "Great. Maybe go back to your OB and see about seeing a pelvic floor. And then tell me what you want to do after that. And we can start doing, sorry, that went off. We can start talking about postpartum training and, like, actually getting started."
Yeah.
So just knowing that that's a resource for postpartum women is, like, super important and something that, like, I will refer women to immediately now. Amazing. Like, no matter how far postpartum they are, like, if somebody comes in and says, "I had a baby and now I want to work out," I'm going to say, "Have you seen a pelvic floor physical therapist?" I
feel like a broken record sometimes when I ask that. But yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And I feel like it's in America, like, the pelvic floor physical therapy, like, department is so overlooked. And the fact that so many people don't know about it, that, like, being a broken record is, like, okay, yep, because it's new to so many other people.
Totally.
So,
in what way, what's the role that, like, street parking has played for you in all of this?
Yeah. So, fiddling around BirthFIT websites and things, I had vaguely heard of street parking before through Miranda, but I didn't know the ins and outs of how it worked or anything like that. But seeing on the BirthFIT website, like, that there was this bundle with street parking, I was kind of like, well, I go to a gym already. Like, why would I need that? And then I learned about the shift program, and I was like, oh, I do need that. I think it was at the end of the Conscious Core, there's something that says something about scaling push-ups. Yes, that means you.
Yeah. Like, even
and I was like,
former games athlete?
Yeah, like, I just did my Conscious Core program. I'm good now, right? And then it's like, but you should be scaling push-ups. Yes, that means you. And I was like, oh, yes, you're right. You're so right. And so I saw the bundle and I was like, okay, let's sign up for street parking, see what it, has to teach, has to offer. And it was so much more than I had ever imagined. I thought it would just be like an online program. And then I found out about the Instagram and the Facebook and then the Mamas group and the buy, sell, trade page. And not only shift, but A, B, C, weightlifting, butts and guts, and all these other programs that, like, I had no idea were accessible through, such a low barrier to entry of whatever the fee is, like $20 a month or whatever it is. Like, the amount of material and content that you get by making that, monthly investment is just, the return on it is tenfold. Like, it's just so valuable. Not only are you getting the programming that you need at that time, like this in terms of shift, like, I didn't know how much I needed shift. Like, that was the one thing that, like, really helped me to keep the brakes on and to continue to allow myself to develop and to recover. Even though I thought I was done recovering, seeing the workouts that came out in shift and knowing that they were somewhat of a recovery workout for me every time was so much more valuable to me than I was, like, even aware of. And as I became more comfortable and more confident that like I wasn't going to be debilitatingly sore every day. And that I could, try a few single unders, see what happens, see if I find out that I need to go back to pelvic floor physical therapy, or if I'm doing things right and can keep progressing. And so I just, and like the mamas group and the support that comes with it, like beyond just the programming, has been a really like good connection piece. It really brings everything back to home. There's a few women on there that I know from real life, in California or Texas or whatever. And that really like helps to unite, like me being here in New York and feeling like I don't know many other postpartum moms. It helps me to like feel connected and like a part of a bigger group. So the community aspect, I guess, is just, it's really a, sorry, Gunner's awake. He's crying. But both David and my mom are home, so somebody's going to check on. Anyway, it's like, it's really it's underplayed. It's downplayed. It's not like, I don't know. I feel like I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. Yeah. And now that I know it, I'm like, yeah, it's so great.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we're all like in our own corners of the world, doing our thing, taking care of babies and ourselves and our lives, but being able to check into this larger group that we already have, something in common with through like street parking, but then more through birth and motherhood and all of that is, it's so helpful. I know you got to take care of Gunner, but is there anything else that you want to like share or anything for either the women in street parking or outside of street parking? Anything you want to leave?
So one of the things that occasionally comes up in street parking is like the breastfeeding issues. Like I'm one of the moms who had a kid with tongue tie that went undiagnosed for like a long time. For us, it was 5 weeks that I kept going back to lactation consultant appointments and nursing groups and things like that. And it's like, if breastfeeding is like super hard for you, one, super get checked out by a lactation consultant, get checked for tongue ties. And two, like the switch to formula at some point is so fine. Like if breastfeeding just doesn't work, either for your kid because your kid doesn't like it, or for you, like because your body is in pain, or you feel like you're not producing, or it's too stressful, or whatever those reasons are, like I feel like that's something that's a really hard decision to make. But at some point, like you do what's best for your own mental health. And for us, I feel lucky that we survived that 5 weeks of a lot of pain for me, and got his tongue tie fixed, and we were able to go for 6 months. And as much as I wanted to continue breastfeeding, like Gunner just stopped being interested. He's very active and started looking around the room instead of looking at me trying to provide him nourishment. Yeah. And we had introduced bottles because of some traveling I was doing and stuff. And he was just more interested in a bottle. And so eventually we just switched over to formula, and everything's been really good. And as much as I thought I was going to be devastated and that the experience was going to be lessened by the fact that he only breastfed for 6 months, like I don't feel that at all. And that's something that's really surprising. I thought I was going to like do this for a couple of years and like have him, be my boob buddy, but he's not, and it's super okay. And I feel like that's something that a lot of the women on our group just have a lot of feelings about, and that's fine. And like, it's good for them to go through those feelings and to process them themselves. But just to know that whatever happens
It's
It's
hard to
okay.
give yourself permission to like feel that it's
Yeah.
okay, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for saying that because I think that's
Sure.
helpful to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me
okay.
think if I feel like one of the other big things that I learned was just to be patient in terms of letting your body to go through its processes and to let your body tell you when it's ready. Because I know a lot of people mentally feel like they need to exercise for various reasons, but your body will ultimately like tell you via pain versus like proper function. If you're having pain or function's not happening the way it's supposed to, like that's your body's sign to either get some help with any of the things that's going on or to back off from the training that you're doing. If you don't have those things, that's fantastic. And like, obviously keep going and push yourself as much as you can. But to really understand that pain is a dysfunction and that dysfunction is not what you want. And to be patient with those things because they can be resolved and time is scarce, but it's also super, super valuable for your own body to go through its processes on it and to get to where you need to be. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm saying that as clearly as I want to.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah. It's just like, I really had to understand that the signals that I was receiving from myself were telling me that I needed to learn more about the way everything worked inside of me and to give myself the time and the space to grow back into the athlete, not the athlete that I was. I'm never trying to be the athlete that I was. Like, I don't want to ever like be in the gym for 4 hours again, ever. I want to go and work out hard for an hour, sometimes 30 minutes if it's that kind of day with the kids. But I still want to have fun things like the ability to do a handstand walk and to do muscle ups and to someday be able to front squat more than I can power clean.
Yeah.
But getting there isn't something that I'm racing to do anymore. I'm not trying to compete. I'm not trying to be nearly the level as I was, but I want to still feel like a badass.
Yeah.
And I want to still feel like I'm strong.
Yeah.
And for each woman, that's going to be different. But it's just a matter of letting yourself get there when you're supposed to.
Yeah, I think it's like, you know, just because you take the time to heal, and maybe that time is long, maybe it's very slow, doesn't mean that you aren't also a badass and on your way to like looking like a badass in a different way. You know what I mean? Like, you're a badass in being able to be super patient and diligent with your recovery.
Yeah.
And then that's also going to hopefully be a badass in that super awesome heavy front squat. It's going to feel so good one day.
Right?
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Okay. Are you on Instagram?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What is your Instagram handle?
I'm at Ingrid Cantola.
Okay,
super
cool.
simple.
Awesome. Just in case anyone wants to like follow you or, you know, whatever, any of the mamas want to like say hi.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this and for everything that you've shared today, but also like everything that you've contributed to that, the Moms Facebook group and our street parking community. It's really cool. I always look forward to seeing what you have to, you know, to share with the other moms.
Yeah, there's so much good information that's shared there. It's such a special place. So it's really fun to be a part of it, and I always love seeing things that you comment as well. It's like, You're very special as well.
Thank you. Well, enjoy the rest of your holidays and
Thank
Gunner's
you.
first birthday. That's super exciting.
I know it's coming up so soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, and say hi to the team for me.
I will.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Bye, Ingrid.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye. All right, you guys. So if you liked what you heard, feel free to share this with another mama or someone else who might need to hear it. And just remember that every woman and every pregnancy is going to be different. And today's story might be very different from your own story, and that's okay. We just want to be able to know all of the different ways that motherhood can look and be able to connect and support each other.